That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The British Constitution provides that taxation and representation shall go together. Therefore, women taxpayers are entitled to vote.
I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Human podcast. This is sort of an epic episode for us here today. We've recorded, 32 or 33 soliloquies from Tony, and not that I'm running out of things to talk to you about, but I thought it was time that we brought in some real experts on some of these issues. So we're continuing with our leadership theme today, but today we want to talk about maybe the most important leadership position any of us have ever had or will ever have. And that is the CEO of our family, of our children. I'm talking about parenting. So I brought in a couple of guests today to help me talk a little bit about this. Brian Burns, many of you know him. He's president and CEO of the Air Charter Safety Foundation, and he's responsible for the foundation's daily operations and leadership. Big organization. Brian has I know he doesn't look like it, but he's got over 35 years experience as a fixed base operator, or FBO industry. For those of you who aren't from aviation, those are the places that business jets come into to get fuel, to file flight plans, to pick up passengers. It's a big deal. Prior to joining the Air Charter Safety Foundation, Brian was a general manager for Signature Flight Support at Washington Dulles and Ronald Reagan National Airports, where he was responsible for all daily operations. And under Brian's leadership, Signature Flight Support at Reagan was rated the #1 FBO in the nation for 4 consecutive years by ProPilot magazine. Brian's also a private pilot. He holds a bachelor's degree from Florida Institute of Technology. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention he was the recipient of the 2021 NBAA Dr. Tonykern Aviation Professionalism Award. So I saved the lowest ranking one for last there, Brian. All that's great, but today we want to talk about his most important leadership role, that of a father, of a daughter and a son, Kelly and Brian, who are both now adults. Now, also joining us today from another generation to talk about some of the modern challenges in leadership in the family or parenting is my daughter-in-law, Rachel Kern. Rachel graduated cum laude from Wesley College in 2015 with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and minors, and I don't know how many minors they allow there, but chemistry, mathematics, and history. Right? So overachiever. Following graduation, she steadily climbed the retail corporate leadership ladder from an entry-level position as a sales associate to store manager and eventually regional general manager, while simultaneously moving from location to location as a military wife. So, nepotism is great in our industry. She's married to my son, Trent, who is a C-17 instructor pilot in the United States Air Force at Charleston Air Force Base in South Carolina. And most importantly, and relevant to this discussion today, she's the mother of 2 preschool sons, Marshall and Hudson. So welcome, Brian and Rachel, to the Only Human podcast.
Thank you,
Tony.
I want to get started today. I guess, Brian, we'll start with you. I just want to throw out a general question. What are some of the similarities between your role as president and CEO of your organization and your role as a father? What are the leadership commonalities that you see there? And we'll get more into detail on specifics of kids here in a few minutes, but just overview that for me.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, Tony. And when you look at leadership and you look at parenting, there is a definite alignment on what skill set that comes with. So when you talk about just raising kids, the influence that you have as a dad, as a mom, you got to be a great communicator, right? That's one of the key elements. Leadership, as we all know, the foundation of it is character, integrity. These are all things that make it, really meaningful. And I look at when raising our kids, I may not have had all the patience in the world. I think that skill set was on my wife's side, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But I think just, the trust factor that we had as a family, coupled with just relating that to today's business environment, right?
Sure.
And so one of the key things, I think at the end of the day, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit about sports and how that relates to, raising kids, but coaching and mentoring. I can't reemphasize that enough. I think when employees and working with a team, it's all about the team. And the fact is, it's all about caring. So if you look at everything I just kind of explained, that's what it takes to raise a family in a sense, right? And so I think at the end of the day, just supporting what they're doing is, and again, that's the combination of both the working environment as well as raising children.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And, I try to equate a little bit as I was preparing for this podcast, the same thing. You and I are both of this relatively same generation. And I wanted to toss it over to somebody who has to deal with a lot more of today's challenges. So, Rachel, how would you respond to that question? Any parallels that you see in raising kids and being a professional leader out there in your industry?
Well, I've always said, and this is kind of a weird thing for me to say, that I almost am trying to run my household kind of like how I used to run my former stores. And you even said I worked in the retail industry. It was all customer service based. I had to hire people. I had to work through their problems. And before that, I was actually used to work with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which we worked with coaches and athletes. And I was a athlete in my former life. So it's just that whole leadership role of trying to work through your kid is screaming at you. I have another kid yelling at me here, and I have to find a way to have them compromise, work it out, and without me compromising my values and what I expect out of them, and setting a clear boundary for them and clear rules that they are perfectly able to follow, and then follow up when they don't follow the boundaries I set.
So, yeah, I think that's fascinating because obviously for Brian and I, we tend to remember our parenting experience when our kids got a little bit older, right? I really don't have a lot that I remember when my kids were toddlers. I remember a few things, right? So we pick up a little bit later in life, and I'd like to toss this back to you, Brian, because you had a particularly interesting situation with your son, and I actually knew about Brian's son before I ever equated the fact that these two were related, because I'm a big college football fan. But I don't want to steal Brian's thunder. Tell me a little bit about the experience that you had and some of the leadership opportunities, lessons, mistakes that came along with that.
Well, Tony, I don't think you and I talked about my daughter, who was also recruited and played college volleyball at North Carolina State, right? So she was a big swimmer, broke all kinds of high school records, big basketball player as well in high school. I think they won 4 state champions. But my point is athletics. And that really, from our family, is where it all began, because both kids were very skilled naturally in sports. Ryan, who really played football right from middle school all through high school, and then was recruited by Stanford to play quarterback. And so I always tell the story that, that process was incredibly exciting. Going through meeting the coaches, going through the whole process of getting even recognized, was just a wonderful experience in general. However, when he finally started starting as a quarterback, what I didn't realize, and this kind of came out in a discussion when he came home for a break from Stanford, and he had a few days at home, he got a phone call from his quarterback coach, and they started talking about the upcoming game. He was going to a bowl game and the scheme and the play calling and what have you. When he got off the phone, I kind of looked at him, and he didn't seem excited. He didn't seem to be all pumped up. And when I realized, I said, Ryan, you okay? I said, you kind of look like did you lose your self-confidence? And at that moment, he just came right back at me and said, Dad, you have no idea how much pressure I'm under. And it was a real eye-opener for me at the time, because this never really came out till after he graduated from college and his football days were over, that he almost felt relieved when he was taken out of a game when he was performing bad. And from my side of it, I just thought as a dad, he's as passionate about the game as you are. He'll get through it. Adversity is life, right? But the reality of it is, that was a real eye opener for me at the end of the day about lessons learned from a dad, and what your dreams are not necessarily his, right? And that was kind of the takeaway from that experience.
That's fascinating. And I guess Rachel was also a college volleyball player. I don't know whether you guys knew that about each other, but one of the things I want to kind of take a little segue here into athletics. One of the things, no matter how good you are, you tend to grow up as maybe a big fish in a small pond, and you eventually reach a level where you're not the best anymore, right? There are people that are comparable, and competition comes at you hard for the first time, and we maybe have all experienced that personally. But how do we help our kids with that? And then if we could just kind of think about that in a slightly broader sense, how do we help our kids realize it's not always going to be easy? And then what are the leadership lessons we take from there into any endeavor in life? And Rachel, I'll toss that over to you, and maybe you can speak from your personal experience, and then some thoughts you have maybe about some of those other areas.
Okay. So first, you are 100% correct on the big fish in a small pond, because that was me. I grew up in a small town, and I was a good volleyball player, but there's only so far I can go being 5'1". And when I went to my first college, and I eventually transferred to Wesley College, where I did not hold that starting position that I held back at my first college. And that was tough, because that was a whole that was my identity. And I had to kind of flip my mindset from, hey, I am a college volleyball player who broke X, Y, and Z records and did this, and this, to I am Rachel and I play volleyball. This is not my end game. And I think we all have to kind of keep that in mind, especially when it comes to sports but life in general. And when that comes back to our kids, they're going to be here when we're gone. They're the ones who are going to hold the memories of us, and it could be good or bad memories too. And I have not been a parent for as long as both of you, not even close. And I will admit, parenting absolutely freaked me out, just for the fact that I was suddenly responsible for this life. And this kid who's going to remember who I am, and I am going to shape him to possibly be this great human being, or I might influence him to not achieve what he wants. And I know it does come down to the individual person a lot, but our parents still play a role in this. So just, what was it, an hour ago, I tried taking my kid out for a bike ride, and we got him this big, brand new big boy bike. It has 2 wheels, not the tri-wheel thing going on. He doesn't want to ride it. Heck, he doesn't even want to put on the helmet because he told me he doesn't want to fall down. So yes, it's probably in his terms, the boo-boos, but it's also, he doesn't want to fail. Whether he realizes that's the actual reason or not, I don't know. But he doesn't want to fail riding this bike that he was so good at before.
So, you brought up a point I'd like to go into a little bit deeper there. And that is, we realized as we grew up through our athletic careers that our identities were larger than being, I was captain of my college basketball team. You were a volleyball player. Our identities, we come to realize our identities are bigger than that. But yet when you're a kid and you're getting all of that recognition, right, and social whatever comes with being a good athlete, it's really tough not to let that happen. I think likewise in business, it's very easy to identify, well, I'm the president and CEO of this. We succeed or fail on what I do and what I think and what I say. And I'm not so sure that the same lessons that we may have learned back in high school that we're trying to maybe pass on to our parents or our children as parents don't play a role here in the angle that it's not really all on us. There's another human being there. There's a whole team there. And so, I don't know. I just like maybe, Brian, you to respond to what Rachel said there about when that identity starts to broaden.
Yeah. So in one thing I want to pick up where Rachel left off is talking about big fish, small pond. Kelly grew up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That was her formative year. So you talk about small population, resort destination, beautiful environment relative to, obviously the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone National Park. So from that perspective, it was a wonderful experience. But when it came to, things that tying it into my view of how the recognition that both of them received during that period of time. Both of them were in the local newspapers literally every week with all their achievements. But I could just tell you that they both stayed very grounded during that period of time. And Tony, we haven't talked, about just what you inherit as a child, genes, DNA. So we always talk about just what's coachable, what's trainable, as opposed to what you come to the, to the job or to the team with certain skill sets, right? And so that is something that, and I gotta tell you, I gotta give my wife a lot of credit relative to that unconditional love. And I throw that out there because that empathy, again, when it comes to leadership and in a business, all that is, critically important. The emotional well-being of your employees, the emotional well-being of your, team. It all ties together. So I don't know. I don't know how you kind of separate that because there's so many things that align as being a parent and in the professional career.
Yeah. So that whole nature versus nurture discussion, right? How much comes with your DNA? How much impact do we as parents really have? And the other thing you brought up there that I think is really important, and that is that we parent as a team in our cases, right? Not every case out there. There's, excuse me, a whole bunch of single parent families that are out there. And and really in our business world, we're sort of a single parent family unless we find those other team members, those other opinion shapers, those other things that complement maybe what didn't come with our DNA. So, any thoughts on any of that, Rachel, before I change subjects and we go in a different direction?
No, just one thought, I guess. The nature versus nurture and all that. I do believe that there is a good mix of it being naturally innate in your being, of being curious, driven, and everything like that. But I just see little things right now. And keep in mind, my son's not even 3 yet, my oldest. But I see the influence we have. I'm pretty sure if his daddy was not a pilot, he would not be pointing up to the sky saying airplane and naming the airplanes. I don't know many 3-year-olds that name airplanes in the sky, but mine does. But if Trent was not a pilot, I don't think he would have as big of a fascination with it, just that one airplane. So it's just a thought.
I think you're really onto something there, Rachel, because I mean, one thing we know is in nurturing families, our kids want to please us, right? They want mom and dad to be happy with them, and I'm wondering in the modern era, and I'm going to come back to you first on this one, Rachel. Brian and I didn't have to deal with social media or any of this educational indoctrination of our children and attack on the family and all of these cancel culture. I could go on and on and on. We didn't have to deal with any of that, especially kind of like in Jackson Hole and in the small areas of South Lyon, Michigan, where I grew up, where we raised our children. Those weren't issues. We thought we had our hands full, but I mean, I really think that the modern generation of parents have their hands full. How is it a big deal? How are you dealing with it? What are some of the challenges of the last few years? And then I'm going to ask both Brian and I to comment on what we might see coming in the next few years that could even make it more challenging. So, Rachel, how are you dealing with any of that stuff? Or I'll just turn it over to you.
So I think the word I'm looking for to describe this is just complete confusion, in the sense that if the parent is not confident in and grounded in their either beliefs or just morals in general, you'd be flip-flopping every 2 seconds. If you just go on like social media and turn on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but I read about it in the news every day, that you always see differing opinions on everything. And I know it's driving me nuts. I know other parents that I've spoken to that it's how you educate your children, what you should believe, what you shouldn't believe, what you should be feeding them, which I don't mind suggestions in the sense that, sure, tell me about the danger in this food, or tell me the benefits of homeschooling versus sending to private school, whatever. But I think what is getting very confusing for parents is that it all sounds good and it all sounds bad. There's always a differing opinion. And like I was telling my husband this yesterday, that my one child, we keep on a harness, for instance, because anybody who knows my oldest kid, he is all over the place. He wants to experience all life at the same time, everything at the same time. So here's the confusing part, though. We get the nasty looks. And I know the harnesses, when they came out, people were like, they're okay. And then, especially in the early 2000s, I believe it was, that they all of a sudden became the worst thing you can do to your child is putting them on a harness, for instance. So when we go out in public with him, I either get the nasty looks of people just being like, oh my gosh, you're treating your child like a dog. But I'm also getting compliments.
Yeah, confusing is a good word. And just a little historical data point. We didn't keep Trent, which is Rachel's husband, on a harness. And I lost him once in a Las Vegas casino, and I lost him another time at the San Antonio Zoo. And were it not for the grace of God, and I don't take his name in vain, and his mother very quickly swinging into action, he may not have been around for you to marry to have our grandchildren. So I'm a big fan of harnesses for high energy, very curious children. But Brian, let me throw that back at you, and I want to give it to you in a different light. So Rachel used the word confusion because of all the changes in social norms and what's acceptable and what's it not, and what's a good idea, what's a bad idea. You and I do a lot of public speaking, right, to a lot of various audiences around the world. From a leadership standpoint, how much do you bend to those norms? Because I know I bend a little. I'll be honest with you. I know I have to bend a little. And how much do you hold the line in this confusion? Because it's not just about parenting, right? It's about leadership everywhere.
So, in today's environment, it's about diversity, it's inclusion, right? And I could tell you, from my perspective, I embrace that. But at the same time, if I'm hiring someone, I want the best, right? And, I even from the element of females getting more and more into our workplace as far as the aviation side of it. I just hired a year ago an executive director for the Air Charter Safety Foundation that is female. I have my director of safety is female, and so I totally embrace that, and I think it's something that when I go out and discuss what the kind of the future looks like in that area. I think women are rising very quickly in our professional or in our profession and many others. So, from my perspective, I think it's something we should be all including when we're hiring folks and we're obviously training them and bringing them into our environment. So, I'm all in favor of it.
So I'll just share a little bit of my philosophy on this and my personal weak point. I am, Brian, I run around the world talking to lots and lots of people. And there's a phrase I always use, and I'll have to explain it a little bit, but who you are is where you were when, right? I grew up in the 1960s, in the 1970s, and all of these things that are going on right now that add confusion that Rachel brought up, I barely understand. And I'm a pretty quick study, right? So I try to figure things out. But at the end of the day, I am who I am. And I hold that very tightly, right? I have a few qualities. I'm intensely curious. I have a pit bull mentality when it comes to human performance and how we're going to help everybody achieve their potential. But beyond that, you know what? I'm not a big social influencer. I'm not very trendy. And I, at one time, felt like I was falling behind. And at the same time, and this is going to anchor back to Rachel's point from the very beginning, I feel like when we know where we stand, those that are with us and follow us and that are influenced by us, be that our children, our employees, people that are watching this that we may never even know, when they know where we stand and we know where we stand, I think that authenticity adds something of huge value in leadership. And I see way too many, just look at politicians on either side of the fence. How they're willing to say or do anything, or some salespeople. Rachel, back to your world, how they're willing to say or do anything to make the sale to influence you. Well, those aren't the kind of people that are going to be leaders for long. They may be able to get some near-term victories over those of us that are rooted in some areas. And that's not to say that bias or stereotyping or anything like that is a good thing. I think we all need to fight those, but we also need to know what the non-negotiables are. So, Brian, you started out saying some things, communication, integrity, ethics, those are as foundational in parenting as they are in leadership, and I couldn't agree more. And we've heard Rachel kind of reinforce that a little bit. What I'd like to do is kind of finish this up and wrap it up by projecting forward. Right now, it seems like things can't get any more chaotic, right? The one constant out there that I know of across 40 or 50 years as a professional is they always get more chaotic. So what can we anticipate in the future, and how can leaders and parents prepare our kids, our employees, those we influence, for a future that we can't predict, but we know is going to be even crazier than the one we're in now? Who wants to start? I won't call on anybody. Anybody want to take that one?
I'll take a shot at it first and see what you think. But, I kind of posed this question to my son last weekend about the future. He is completely off of Facebook. He has seen the damage that has done with the social media world. But when you look at technology, Tony, relative to AI, virtual reality, you look at things that automation in our space when it comes to aviation, and where we are with skill sets, and where is the human element that is coming into play versus technology just going fast forward. And so, if you kind of look back when we grew up, and did we ever vision the internet? Did we ever vision Google? Did we ever vision, MySpace? Remember that one?
Yeah.
YouTube. Think about that. So you're going, a cell phone? What? That could take pictures? So you think about that vision and that long, term thinking. I mean, you better embrace it. And change is coming. We all know it. And you can fight it all you want, but it's a different world. And and I told my, Ryan, when he was going through all that adversity, you adjust and you adapt, because you're going to make yourself miserable if you're trying to live in the past. And so, I don't know. It's a challenge. Is there a magic formula, a given model that we should all be looking at and considering? Most of the things in life, good, bad, kind of happen, and it's how you respond, right? That makes the difference. So that's my quick thoughts.
Yeah. So Brian and I this is all a philosophical exercise for us, Rachel. For you, it's real. What do you see? What do you think we need to do to prepare this next generation for the future?
Well, all right. Let me preface this. My biggest, not worry, but concern, I guess, is the best way I can say this, is the amount of information that is getting thrown, at me right now and my children. And I'm not talking about the news alerts and everything. I guess I kind of am. But I do not believe the human brain was meant to have this much information all at the same time. We wonder why children's emotions and our emotions go up and down so much during the day, and why we see issues going on college campuses, why we see issues going across the board in politics, why people are flip-flopping. And we're just seeing a lot of big emotions coming out of people because of this information that is getting thrown at us so quickly. And some of the information is correct, some of it's not. And then some of it's just tweaked a little bit, which is still not in that not correct category. I believe in a black and white kind of thing here. But I just think I'm concerned about how my kids are going to process this, because it's either going to go in two extremes in my view. It's either going to continue getting worse, and we see this coming in with the AI. And I think I was even reading an article the other day how some AI thing, I'm honestly not versed on this very well, generated a picture of someone at the Met Gala that wasn't even there. Again, false information. And so we have that to battle coming up. Or it's going to go in another direction, or maybe it'll just go in both. I don't know. But an information shutdown, in the sense that people are just going to go underground, sort of like get off social media, get off, like go to normal phones, like, the ones back in the 90s, like flip phones and stuff like that, the fun ones. And just kind of relax your brain a little bit. I feel like the middle ground is slowly going by the wayside, because you can't really have both worlds right now, at least in my view, or it's very difficult to maintain, especially.
Yeah, excuse me,
no,
I
you're
didn't
good.
cut you off, Rachel, go ahead.
I'm good.
I think what I hear you saying is maybe a little bit of the history major or minor coming out in you, and that is maybe the best thing we can do for our kids is teach them. I'm going to use a term that people throw around here, but critical thinking. Yeah. I mean, how do you determine what is real? How do you determine what's important to you at this moment in time? How do you process, or how do you realize what the limitations on your processing skills are? I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in these things and let it flow over you, keeping in mind that we know the business model is called the attention economy, right, for a reason. When we're on Facebook or using Google or any of these other things, we can never forget. I mean, most of these things were originally funded by DARPA as intelligence gathering things. So when you're not paying for anything, you're not the customer, you're the product, right? So of course, there's going to be people trying to angle us this way, that way, make us anger, fight with each other, or pull us to buy something new or believe something new. And the one thing that I hope I imparted into my kids, and that hopefully I try to impart into the people that I'm working with all the time, is slow down and figure out what's real and what's not real, and what's important and what's not important, right? And that may be the most valuable skill right now of leadership in this era that we have. AI can do far more than generate a picture at the Met Gala. I'm on a whole bunch of different AI beta things. I could be AI right now, and you would not know it. Right? It's a world where we're going to have to verify just about everything if it's important and it's meaningful to us. So I guess I'd like to wrap this up by giving each of you a kind of a last word on parenting as leadership, or parenting or leadership, or none of the above. Anything else you want to say? And then I'll wrap it up with kind of an intro to our next episode. So, Brian, let's start with you. Any last thoughts?
So back to my conversation with my kids prior to this discussion, one of the things that Ryan brought up, and it kind of hit me straight in the heart, because he said something to the fact that you put me under a lot of pressure to succeed during my football years and during my high school days. And, I was forced to do things like training and drills and study, film for football, which took the fun out of the sports that I played. And again, when you, and he was being genuine and sincere with me. And I, at the end of the day, if there's anything that I could probably change, was that, we all as parents, we want to put your kids in the right opportunity to be successful. We want them to be happy at the end of the day, right? And so for me, I probably did a little bit too much of that, and was a little bit overbearing and, controlling. And so if I had to take a step back and reflect, I would have backed off many more times than just engaging I'll tell you a real quick story, Tony, that proved this with my daughter. And that was when she was being recruited by North Carolina State. We went out to the campus. It was in the middle of summer. It was like her sophomore year in high school. We're on campus, taking a tour, dead quiet because there was no other students on campus. My daughter's about 10 feet ahead of my wife and I, walking with the coach. And the coach is just asking her personal questions. What's your interests? What's your hobbies? Just trying to get to know conversation. The whole time that the coach is asking my daughter questions, I'm answering them. I'm 10 feet behind. I'm 10 feet behind the guy. My daughter stops in the middle, turns around, says, "Dad, who are you doing this for? Me or you?"
Whoa.
Oh, I mean, the air just, came out of me. And I'm just telling you, that was just an experience that set the tone for how I kind of behaved going forward, right? So I'll leave you with that.
Out of the mouth of babes. No, I trust me, I suffered for some of the same things. We had post-game debriefs from T-ball on up through every sport my kids ever played. So, Rachel, last thoughts and words.
I love hearing these stories. It gives me something to look forward to, maybe, or learn from. But basically, what I'm learning about parenting, and I have not done it that long, I have to, one, go in with a clear mind and open my eyes to what my child is saying to me. But I accept advice from other people. I filter it, don't get me wrong, and I process it through my own mind and take a look at my kids and see if it applies to them or not. But I just have to filter through all the noise and realize, just let my kids be kids and let me still be the parent, but it's only a short time I get to be a parent right now, and just to enjoy all of it while I can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to go by fast, Brian, I can tell you. Well, listen, we're going to wrap this up, and I really want to thank both of you. I think this has been a really nice investigation on what is, as I began this podcast with, what I think is the most important leadership position any of us can ever have, because the ripple effect, we are who our ancestors were, passed down many, many times, and we're now a part of that fabric of what our families look like and what the world looks like moving forward. So thank you again. And for the rest of the audience out there in listener land, next week we're going to go a little bit deeper into leadership. We're going to go into the biggest leadership mistakes that have ever been made. So please tune in for that one. We drop every Tuesday at 9 a.m. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Click like, subscribe, share, get that coffee cup. Speaking of coffee cups, Rachel and Brian, you've got an Only Human podcast coffee cup coming your way. I will need some hard snail mail addresses to get them to you. But thank you so much for being a part of this. And we look forward to future episodes where maybe we can bring you back in and talk about some more things. Like always, get better every day. Be thinking about the things you can do to achieve where you are today and where you might be tomorrow, and help others do the same. I'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks
you guys.